Hello, I'm just going to share with you a little bit of help regarding some of the maths that we did this week. So, some of us, quite a lot of us, struggled with the ordering of numbers. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down really step by step. There's no work to hand in for this video, but this is just going to help those of you who have asked for that extra bit of support, which is obviously fine. Here we have three numbers. We've got the number 3, 1, and 7. Can we put these in order from smallest to largest? We call that ascending order. Can we put these in ascending order? This is obviously a very simple one. It's 1, and then 3, and then 7. 1 is the smallest number, then 3, then 7. Okay, now we've got a mix of some fractions, and we've got the number 1 as well. We've got 1/1000th, we've got 100th, we've got 1, and we've got 10. Now, can you put these in order from smallest to largest? Well, some people might think, okay, well, I know 1,000 is a really big number, so that must be the biggest one. So 1,000 must be the biggest one, and then the next biggest number is 100, so it must be that, and then the next one, so I think they're going to be no, because I know I've got a 1 here, I've got a 10 there, I've got 100 down, I've got 1,000 there. That is a really easy mistake to make, so don't worry if you did make that mistake. But let me explain to you why these are actually completely in the wrong order. When we have a fraction, what we know that means we're splitting a number into some equal parts. And the amount of equal parts we split it into is told to us by the denominator. Okay, so if we had 1 whole of something, and we were to split it into 10 equal parts, each of those parts is worth 1/10. And the whole thing is worth 1. So we can already see, can't we, that this is 1. This here, this is 1/10. So you can see how much smaller this shaded area is than this shaded area. It's 10 times smaller. Now, if I was to do the same, I'm not going to be able to do this on the board, but if I was to do the same to make hundredths, what I'm doing is I'm splitting this equal part into 100 equal parts. And then if I was to, they're going to be absolutely tiny. And then if I was doing 1,000th, I'm splitting that bar, the same size bar, into 1,000 equal parts. Think how small, imagine how small each of those parts would be. A 1,000th is a tiny fraction of 1. It is split into 1,000 equal parts. Imagine if you had £1 and you split it into 1,000 equal parts, everyone would get 1/10 of a penny. So that is really small. So don't be fooled just by your knowledge of, I know 10 is a smaller number than 100, and that's a smaller number than 1,000. In fact, what you're doing is, because 1,000, you're correct, is a bigger number, but you're splitting 1 into 1,000 equal parts, and that is what 1,000th is. So that was the first mistake that some of us made. The next thing that I want you to do is to have a look at these fractions. Now, I've got 1/100th, 2/100ths, 7/100ths, and 99/100ths. It's really easy for me to see that they are in order from the smallest to the largest. Now, I've got 1 whole. I've split it into 100 equal parts, which I'm not going to be able to draw on the board, and I'm just shading in one of them. So I've split into 100 equal parts, and I'm just shading one of them. Now, if I had the same block again, I could split it into 100 equal parts and then take 2 of them. Can you see how taking 2/100ths is more than taking 1/100th? Now, it's really easy to compare fractions and put them in order from smallest to largest when the denominators are exactly the same, just like they are here. The denominators are the same, then all we're doing is ordering. 100th is the smallest, then 200ths, 700ths, 99/100ths. 99/100ths is almost 1, isn't it? If we split something into 100 equal parts and you took 99 of them, that is what 99 hundredths is. Now, some of us did now struggle when we had to put things in order which were all different denominators. I can't now, because my denominators are the same, I can't just say this is the smallest. I can't just go, oh, that's the smallest because it's got 1, and then that one because it's got 7, and then that one because it's got 85 at the top. It's not that simple because the denominators are all different. So what I need to do is I need to convert everything to the same denominator. So now what I'm going to do is find some equivalent fractions. Now, remember when finding equivalent fractions, whatever I do to the bottom, to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. So you need to be able to identify what the easiest thing for you to convert to. I would suggest that in a case like this, where you have tenths and hundredths and thousandths, the easiest thing to do is convert to thousandths, because all we need to do is multiply denominators and numerators by 10. So here I have the fraction 85 hundredths, and I want to put it over 1,000. So it'll be easier for me to compare these two. Now, what have I done from 100 to get to 1,000? Well done. If you use your knowledge of place value, realise that what I've done there is I've multiplied it by 10. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. So now here I've got 1/1000th, and here I've got 850 thousandths. I've got 1,000th here, I've got 850 thousandths there. This one is clearly much, much bigger than this one already, isn't it? So let's find out where 7/10 is going to go in our process. So again, I want to convert it so it is a fraction over 1,000. That's going to make it so I can compare them and put them in order. What have I done from 10 to get to 1,000? Well done if you're able to identify by looking at the place value, looking at the zeros. I've multiplied it by 100. So I must do that to the top, which gives me the answer of 700. So I have 700 thousandths here. I have 1,000th here, and I've got 850 thousandths here. Now, can you tell me which order they need to go in? Well done if you were able to identify that 1,000th is the smallest. Then the next smallest is 700 thousandths. Then the next smallest is 850 thousandths. Now, these are all in the right order. You've done all the maths now. You don't need to do any maths. But if you do get a question like this, you're going to need to answer it and put the fractions in the form they were originally written in the question. So we can see that 1/1000th is going to stay the same because that's how it was written in the question. How was 700 thousandths written in the question? Can you identify it? It was like this, wasn't it? It was written as 7/10. And then how was 850 thousandths written in the question? Well, it was written as 85 hundredths. Separating them with commas, they are now arranged. The original question, the fractions from the original question are now arranged in order from smallest to greatest. The next complication comes when we don't just have fractions, but we have decimals as well. Decimals can be tricky at first, but make our life so much easier once we start to understand them. So here is what we can do now. We can convert everything into decimal numbers, or we can convert everything into fractions. Now, I am going to leave it up to you. This is one of those situations where what is best for you is the best way to get the answer. However, in my opinion, in this question, because we already have 3 fractions and just a 1 decimal, it might be easier to convert into fractions first. So what is 0.3 as a fraction? Using your knowledge of place value from this week and last week, you should be able to identify straight away that it is 3/10. Okay, so now I've got 3/10, I've got 1/10, I've got 200ths, and I've got 43 thousandths. Can I compare those 4 fractions straight away? Well, I can have a go, I can have a think, I can make a reasonable guess, but the thing I need to do, again, is convert them all. So I'm going to convert them all so they are fractions over 1,000, just like I did in the previous question. That way, all I'm doing is multiplying. The reason it's easy to do that is if I wanted to, say I wanted to try and convert them all to tenths, then I would have to convert this to tenths, I've divided that number by 100, and 43 divided by 100 is 0.43, and I don't really like to mix decimals and fractions, okay? When you're just working things out, it's not wrong to do that if it helps you understand, but it gets very, very messy and very, very complicated. So the easiest thing to do is just try and convert them all into thousandths, into whatever the biggest denominator is. So let's have a go at that. 3/10 I want as a number of thousandths. What I do to the bottom, multiply by 100. Must do it to the top, which is going to give me 300. So I've got 300 thousandths there. Again, I have multiplied the denominator by 100, so I want to multiply the numerator by 100. Last one. This time, what have I done to the denominator? This time I've just multiplied by 10, so I must do the same for the numerator. 2 times 10 is 20. Okay, so now all of my fractions are expressed with a denominator of 1,000. So what I need to do now is put them in order. So I have 300 thousandths, I've got 100 thousandths there, I've got 20 thousandths there, I've got 43 thousandths there. So putting those in order from smallest to largest, I have 20 thousandths, I have 43 thousandths, next is 100 thousandths, and then 300 thousandths. So just to check, my denominators are all the same, that is correct, and my numerators are increasing in size each time. 20 is the smallest number, then 43, then 100, then 300. So these are all in order now. I've finished with the maths. I just need to pop them back in the way they were expressed in the question. So how was 20 thousandths expressed in the question? Well, it's here. It was expressed as 2 hundredths. How was 43 thousandths expressed in the question? Well, it was expressed as 43 thousandths, so it can stay as it was. How was 100 thousandths expressed in the question? It's here, look. It was expressed as a tenth. And how was 300 thousandths expressed in the question? Well, it was expressed, look, as 0.3. So that is the correct order as they were expressed in the question. Now, those of you who like a challenge might want to pause the video and have a go at this one on your own or with an adult, or if not, we can just, if you would find this question quite challenging, you're quite difficult, you can just continue to watch the video. Okay, now we have an array, an arrangement of fractions, and they're all expressed as some are mixed number, some are ordinary fractions, and some are improper fractions. So we need to do the same, put them in order. Now, this time, we can see that the denominators, they're not all conveniently tenths or hundredths or thousandths. So we need to work out a way to convert them. So here is what we need to do. I would suggest that the easiest thing to work with when you get questions like this is converting everything into a mixed number. And I'll explain why once I've done it. So 1.5, already a mixed number, can move on. 22 quarters, an improper fraction. So I need to convert this to a mixed number. Remember, the denominator stays the same when converting to a mixed number. I work out how many lots of 4 I can get out of 20. So let me just give myself a little more space here. One second, bear with me. I've just forgotten to give myself some space. And what will be easy for me to do, because I know I'm going to have a whole number and then a fraction over 4. How many whole times can I take 4 out of 22? I have to do my 4 times tables, don't I? 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 4, 12. 4 times 4, 16. 5 times 4 is 20. So I can take it out 20 quarters, which is equal to 5. And that leaves me with 2 quarters. So I've got 5 and 2 quarters there. Next, I have this, which is already a fraction. It's a fraction that's less than 1, isn't it? There's no whole parts in 6/10 at all. So that is going to stay as it is. And we have a mixed number here. Now, we don't need to do any more than that. The reason for that is because I can now just compare the whole number parts of these fractions, okay? This fraction, 6/10, that's less than 1. It's not 1 and 6/10, it's not 2 and 6/10, it's not 3 and 6/10, it's just 6/10, 6/10 of 1 whole. So that one is a smaller number than 1. So that must go first. Now I have 1.5, 5 2 quarters, and 3 1/5. Well, I can just look at the whole number parts, can't I? I've got 1 there, 5 there, and 3 there. So, which is the smallest one? Well, it must be 1.5. Which is the next smallest one? Well, it's 3. So 3 1/5 is my next in order. And last but not least is 5 2 quarters, which in the question was written as 22 quarters. So that is how you would go about converting those numbers. I hope that clears it up. People might have, don't worry about having to know absolutely everything. And a lot of you, what I said in your work was this. The main thing that you need to understand is that a tenth, what that is 1 divided by 10. It's a whole 1 divided into 10 equal parts. And we write that as a decimal as 0.1. A hundredth is 1 divided into 100 equal parts. So each of those parts is much smaller. And we call that number as a decimal 0.01. You can see the 1 has moved over 1 place value into the hundredth column. Finally, our fraction 1,000th is 1 divided by 1,000. So it's 1 divided into 1,000 equal parts. And we call that as a decimal 0.001. Again, we can see the 1 has moved another place value to the right. The last thing that we want to understand before we move on to next week is that this, a hundredth is 10 times smaller than a tenth. That's why it's moved 1 place value over to the right. And you can see I'm dividing it by a number which is 10 times greater. So that relationship also exists here. So I'm going to leave this video on the class streams for both 5LP and 5LL. Feel free to watch it and refer back to it next week when we will be continuing our knowledge of fractions and decimals.